everybody, and welcome to another edition of Quick Trivia with Mike. I'm your host, Mike Brever. I hope you're having a good time with this program. I know I'm having a really good time bringing it to you. I have a couple bits of business to deal with before we get into the proper show itself. If you remember, in weeks past, we were in front of the stained glass windows in Lindsay Hall for filming this program. Last week was the first time we tried our luck at this new set, and we all thought it went fairly well. But a very, very good friend of mine indicated to me that I sat on the wrong side of the table. I asked why I was on the wrong side of the table, and she really didn't explain it other than to say, you just were. You were on the wrong side of the table. So for my very good friend, we're going to switch this week, and I will be bringing you the trivia questions from this chair. I must say it does feel a little bit more comfortable, so maybe there's something to this. The other thing is, I talked last week, the second bit of business, I talked last week about the fact that it's been about 12 weeks since I've had a haircut. And we all know that barbers and hairstylists and all the rest of that are starting to open up again now. And you'd think I could go. But my wife has told me she likes my hair a little bit longer. So now I'm really torn. When do I go get a haircut? Maybe you should call in and give me your advice on when I should get a haircut. But as for now, maybe another week or so, we're just going to leave it the way it is and make my wife happy. I know she'll be very happy about that. Let's get right into our trivia now, shall we? Once again, though, we're here coming to you on channel 955, right here at East Castle Place, ECTV, and we'll be bringing you station management in a couple of minutes, reminding you of just who the management is of ECTV. But let's get into trivia. First of all, we had a What Am I last week. And if you recall, this was the picture of what it was. Now, Scott, I'm going to hold this a little bit because I think there might be a glare for people. It's in a plastic casement here. Do you think you have a good shot of that, Scott? All right. And I pointed out last week that this was an item that was found on every public beach on the River Thames in the 18th century. You'll see there's a little bit of a bellows in there, a couple other items as well. And I asked you, what was this? We had two people that got the answer correct, actually. It was a little bit of one of those medical things that society grows out of. But what it really is a tobacco enema kit. Earlier than the 18th century, of course, you remember Sir Walter Raleigh brought tobacco back from the New World, and it was a soothing type thing that people truly enjoyed. And they felt if this product could really calm you down and give you a new outlook on things, maybe it had medicinal and therapeutic properties as well. This tobacco enema kit was present to try to save the lives of drowning victims. The theory was that the bellows would blow smoke, and it would do two things. The first thing is that the smoke would warm your innards so that your intestines and things like that would be warmed, and that would prepare you to be rejuvenated. There also was already a realization that there was something in here that stimulated the heart, the nicotine. The theory at that time was that you'd warm the innards, and then your heart would jumpstart, and it would bring you back to life. Sometime around 1812, doctors realized that actually the nicotine did more harm to the heart than good, and things like this no longer existed on beaches. I still wonder, what it would be like if you were drowning and someone actually brought you to from your unconscious state, and they're giving you this. I'm not sure that I would think I was being saved. I'd kind of wonder what in the world was going on. But at any rate, that was the first question and the answer to it. The second question that we had for you had a little bit to do with the history of architecture. I told you quite a bit about Frank Lloyd Wright. I also told you that Frank Lloyd Wright worked closely with at least two of his sons in the later stages of his architecture career. We talked about some of the wonderful edifices that he did. Taliesin in Spring Green and Taliesin West in Arizona. The Imperial Hotel in Tokyo. Falling Waters, which is a private residence in Mill Run, Pennsylvania. We also talked about the fact that there were some wonderful new building materials that Frank Lloyd Wright introduced into some of his buildings. Precast concrete blocks, glass bricks, zinc instead of lead in stained glass windows. Those were all innovations that Frank Lloyd Wright really supported, and he felt that they made his architectural designs much better because of the innovative new materials. I mentioned that in addition to these materials, the Wright family created another building material that was so easy to work with that any home repairman, any home fix-it guy could work with it. And in fact, everybody said it was so easy to work with that it actually was fun. What was this Wright building material? It was a little bit of a trick question. Actually, John Lloyd Wright, Frank Lloyd Wright's son, invented it. He was so impressed with the architectural design of the Imperial Hotel in Tokyo and the knob and groove construction design that Frank Lloyd Wright utilized in creating that magnificent edifice, that he invented Lincoln Logs. Lincoln Logs was an invention of the Lloyd Wright family, primarily because it was inspired by Frank Lloyd Wright's work, and his son John used it to create this wonderful toy that young children have been using probably for the next 80 years or so. I know I played with them as a youngster, maybe some of you did as well. And again, it was so easy to use, anybody could do it, and all of us described it as fun. So there you have it. The answer to question number 2 was Lincoln Logs, inspired by the architecture of Frank Lloyd Wright. The third question that I had for you last week was, who was the earliest serving president to still have grandchildren alive today? I pointed out to you that we actually upload these programs to channel 955 through YouTube. And as a result of that, many people watch it that aren't necessarily East Castle Place residents, but those that aren't East Castle Place residents do not compete for the prizes. Well, some of the people that watch are my brother in Virginia and my sister in New Jersey. My sister in Waukesha watch as well. My brother corrected me on this, and he told me the earliest serving president to have children alive today might be the answer that I'm presenting here today, but he doubted very sincerely that it's plural. He thinks maybe only one grandchild is alive today. Well, the correct answer was John Tyler, our 10th president of the United States. He actually succeeded William Harrison. If you remember, William Harrison and John Tyler ran as president and vice president. Their slogan was Tippecanoe and Tyler too. Tippecanoe was the location of a battle that William Harrison served as the lead general in, and he won. And as a result of that, he was known as Tippecanoe, a war hero, for many years after that. Unfortunately, when he was elected in 1841, giving his inaugural address, he caught a severe cold, and within a month, he passed away from pneumonia. He was succeeded by John Tyler, who became our 10th president. John Tyler was born in 1790. He lived until 1862. He actually lived after his presidency on his family estate in Virginia, which he called Sherwood Forest. after the Robin Hood character. And so that's how he lived out the later years in his life. But he served as president from 1841 to 1845. John Tyler was really kind of an interesting individual. He was married twice. His second wife was almost 30 years his junior. So you can see how there were children that he had, which were actually much later in life, that began this sequence of 3 generations spanning 150 years. Again now, John Tyler had 15 children. The seventh, his second wife had 7 of those 15 children. The 5th child of his second wife was Lyon Gardner Tyler, who was born in 1853 and lived until 1935. Lyon Gardner Tyler had 2 children who were alive in August of 2019. So my brother was actually wrong on that. As of August 2019, John Tyler actually had 2 grandchildren alive yet. Lyon Gardner Tyler Jr. and Harrison Ruffin Tyler. Lyon Gardner Tyler Jr. was born in 1924 and was still alive in August of 2019. Harrison Ruffin Tyler was born in 1928 and he was still alive in August of 2019. Now, is it possible that one or both have passed away since 2019? Maybe. But if you remember last week, I gave you the condition that my information came from an article in 2017. So actually, there were 2 grandchildren alive in August of 2019. So those were, in fact, your 3 answers. It was Lincoln Logs, it was John Tyler, and it was the tobacco enema kit. 2 of our players last week actually got all 3 of those right. Those were really interesting questions on some diverse topics. So I give them a lot of credit. It was the Sundbergs again, and it was Kelvin Schrader, 2 of our repeat winners. So for the first time ever, we had to go to our new tiebreaker format. What was the music that we played as the bumper music on our show? And the Sundbergs identified it as a piece from Verdi. Kelvin Schrader identified it as a piece from Carmen. Kelvin Schrader was actually right. It was a piece from Carmen. And as a result of that, Carmen Schrader wins this week by tiebreaker. But congratulations to the Sundbergs for getting those 3 very, very difficult questions right. My hat's off to both of you. Now let's move on to this week, shall we? I've got 3 very interesting questions for you, and all I have to do is find my notes in order to get busy. But before we do so, I want to point out that this week's show is brought to you by Kelvin Schrader. Kelvin Schrader, a past winner, not because of this week. Kelvin's finding out now that he won. But as a past winner, Kelvin has joined a new tradition that was started by the Myers and continued by the Hills. Kelvin has donated a bottle of wine for you, our players, to enjoy, hopefully with you being the next winner. We have a bottle for next week of Arbor Mist White Zinfandel. It's a strawberry flavor. It really looks good to me in kind of a frosted glass. And what I really like, it's a little bit bigger bottle. You can have a little bit of a party with your neighbors in the hallway maybe. Keep that 6-foot distance though when you host that party. We want to make sure that all of you stay very safe and able to enjoy something like this without risking any health issues with the coronavirus. Let's get right into this week's questions now, shall we? My research for this week has come up with a couple of questions that I think you're going to find very interesting. We talked, first of all, as a follow-up to this past week, we had a question about toys. The answer, of course, was Lincoln Logs. We talked several weeks ago about a game that was invented as a result of the polio epidemic, and that turned out to be Candyland. Toys really are an interesting thing and lead into some very, very interesting trivia questions, primarily because toys are as old as civilization itself. The oldest known toy, samples of which have been found in pyramids in Egypt and also in some tombs in Greece, were marbles. Kids have been playing with marbles now for probably about 8,000 or 9,000 years, and it's a game that kids still love today. One of the oldest toys that is not related to marbles also originally came from Chinese origins, but it became more pronounced with the Greeks. In 500 BC, we can find samples of yo-yos that children played with back then. You know, the old yo-yo, the circle, two circles connected by a stick with a string. Kids love it today yet, and it's been around, well, I mean, we're talking at least 3,000 years. So toys that we still play with today go back a long way. I talked to you also a little bit about the history of television. We talked about the fact that the very first commercial was Bulova watches in the middle of a Brooklyn Dodgers baseball game in 1941. I'm going to combine those two topics into the first question for this week. What was the first toy that was ever advertised on television? The first toy that was ever advertised on television. Really, really an interesting find, if any of you can stumble onto that. The second question that I have for you has a little bit to do with politics. You know that in today's society, the left is the liberals and the rights are conservatives, and there's very little compromise today, as virtually every issue is defined by the two parties. In American society, the left typically is defined as Democrats, the rights are defined as Republicans. However, left and right is prevalent throughout politics and the entire globe. Clearly, parties are called different things in different countries. But my question to you is, why do we call the left, and why do we call the right, the right? Universally, it is viewed as the left being a little bit more liberal, the right being a little bit more conservative. Why is that? There's a bit of a historical context to that, and I'm going to ask you to dig that out and let me know. The third question that I have for you also gets back to a topic that we talked about several weeks ago. We talked about the fact that NASA, which is currently located in Houston, was originally targeted to be in Cambridge, Massachusetts. We talked about the fact that even though the infrastructure was already being built in Cambridge, Massachusetts, all of that was abandoned, and the administrative offices for NASA were moved to Houston. We talked about the fact that the crucial reason why that happened was because of Lee Harvey Oswald. John F. Kennedy was assassinated on November 22nd, 1963. Prior to being president, he was the senator from Massachusetts, and he was the driving force in having NASA located in Cambridge, Massachusetts. He was succeeded by LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson. Johnson was the senator from Texas before he was vice president, and then succeeded JFK to the presidency. He decided that his home state should be the home field, if you will, for NASA. And so, before it ever even opened, everything was abandoned in Cambridge, Massachusetts, Construction began in Houston, and that's where NASA is to this day, in Houston. We talked about that fact that there are many things that have taken place. Houston, we're about to land. Houston, we're entering the atmosphere. Houston, we're going into a blackout zone. We'll reconnect with you in 3 minutes. One of the sayings I gave you, though, when we talked about this 3 weeks ago was, Houston, we have a problem. Who was it that said, Houston, we have a problem? It's a phrase we all know, but who was it that said, Houston, we have a problem? There you have it. Those are my 3 questions for you today. A little bit of a space question, a little bit of a political question, and returning to the roots of some of our topics here, a toy question. Get your answers into me by noon on Monday, and there's a couple of ways you can do so. You can get it into me by putting a note in my mailbox. If you stop and you talk to Lila or you talk to Famata or who's ever at the concierge desk with your questions, they'll put it in my mailbox and you will be in. Or you can call 963-8425, my desk phone, or you can email me at mbraver@eastcastleplace.com. I know I gave you that phone number and the email address a little bit too quick. Never fear. Call the front desk, ask Lila or Famata for my phone number or my email address. They'll give it to you and you can get it to me and you'll be in. Again, we have a wonderful bottle of wine for our winner this week. On behalf of station management here at Channel 955, Tyler Gudex, our president, Laura Wengler, our executive producer, Scott McFerrin, my producer, and Cooper Ledvina, our artistic director. And I should point out to you, by the way, Scott McFerrin is more than just the producer at ECTV. He also is my producer. He's my cameraman, and he's one of my researchers. He finds the bumper music that I hope you're all enjoying. And by the way, that bumper music is the tiebreaker if 2 or more people answer the same number of questions correctly. Tell me the bumper music that Scott has added to this week's show, and that's the tiebreaker. Well, there you have it. I'm Mike Brever, your host. This is Quick Trivia with Mike. Until next week, I ask you to stay safe, I ask you to be smart, and I ask you to be patient. We'll all be together again soon enough, enjoying that wonderful East Castle Place hospitality. Until next week, so long.